Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Praise Yahuwah, praise Yahuwah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Praise Yahuwah, praise Yahuwah. I will come upon Yahuwah, who is worthy to be praised. So shall I be saved from mine enemies. Rise up, O Yahuwah, let thine enemies be scattered. Let them that hate thee flee from before thee. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Praise Yahuwah. Hallelujah. I'd like to welcome everyone to qodeshnation and our Shabbat class. Praise Yahuwah. Brothers and sisters, we want to let you know that we had a great time at the Hebrew gathering in Cincinnati. Hallelujah. Praise Yahuwah. Hallelujah. Let's give Yahuwah a hand clap. Praise Yahuwah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Just we're able to just connect with some great people, and praise Yahuwah. Just it was a great time, an edifying time. Hallelujah. And brothers and sisters, you know what I'm going to be addressing today is a subject that actually came up while we were there, because that we had different speakers that spoke, and there was a time when the brethren got off to their own, the sisters got off to their own, and we dealt with different subjects. Praise Yahuwah. But one subject that I want to bring up, and I want to deal with this in detail, because I've seen the need now. I've seen the need in the nation for accurate teaching in this area, because this is serious, and you're going to see what I'm talking about, when I bring this out. But the title of this lesson is, Should Women Wear Pants? Should women wear pants? Now, this was one of the things that came up, in our discussion, and it was pretty divided. Some said yes, some said no. Praise Yah. And this is not a new subject for us. Praise Yah. Those of us, as far as my family and even people we fellowship with, because this was a hump that we got over even when we were in the Christian churches. And so this was something that was dealt with even back then. But since we've come into the Israelite movement, we see that there's really not a consensus in this movement on this subject. That you have people on both sides of this argument. And this is important. It's very important because of the implication of the commandment that I'm going to bring forth. Praise Yah, that I'm going to open up this lesson with, which is Deuteronomy chapter 22:5. And what we have to understand is that if that is referring to pants, women in pants, then that is a practice that is sin. Now, if that's not what it's referring to, then people like me shouldn't be going around and saying that that's sin or that's wrong. Praise Yah. So that's why that we've got to get into the scriptures. Praise Yah. And we've got to just let the scriptures decide just what the answer to this question is. Now, let me say this, because this, along with some other issues, that a handful of other issues I find, especially issues of qodeshnation, issues of set apartness, what you will find is that issues of set apartness come up. And a lot of times there's not a specific command dealing with it. There's not a specific thou shalt or a thou shalt not. So what do? Do we okay everything that does not have a specific thou shalt or a specific thou shalt not attached to it? No. Well, brothers and sisters, of course not. That would be a dangerous practice. Yes, because do you know there is not a specific command in the Torah against lesbianism? There isn't. You will not find that in there, that a woman shall not lay with a woman as she would a man. You will not find that. And so because there's not a specific command against lesbianism, you have some men, even mores now, teachers, that believe it's okay to have two wives and to have their two wives, how do I say this, do that which is against nature with one another. They believe that that's okay, and their defense is, hey, there's no Torah command against that, against female homosexuality. Do you see the trouble we can get in by taking on this mentality of it has to be a specific thou shalt or a specific thou shalt not? There's no specific command against snorting cocaine.
No, there is not.
So is it wrong? You see? So what happens is when we don't have specific precepts to deal with the matter, then we have to look to principles. You're going to see what I'm talking about as we get into this lesson. That because we may not have specific precepts that specifically talk about the subject that we're dealing with here. Now, we've got something that's close, all right, but not real specific as far as what goes on in this culture today. We do have some principles to help guide us into the right judgment concerning this matter. Hallelujah. And so what I ask is, see, I know that there's a number of you all that watch my videos. Some of you women, you wear pants. All right, and what I want you to do is just watch this video with an open mind, with an open heart. Praise Yahuwah. No, I'm not trying to condemn you, put you down, or judge you. Praise Yahuwah. But I've got to be faithful, and I've got to deliver Yah's word faithfully. And I do ask, share this. Share this with others. Share this with as many sisters as you can. Praise Yahuwah, because this is important. See what I'm going to deal with now. I'm going to deal with what the scriptures say, but I'm also going to deal with some misconceptions that are out there that I've seen come up whenever this subject comes up. I'm going to deal with some common objections which can easily be answered. Praise Yah. So, without further delay, Deuteronomy, Devarim, chapter 22, in verse 5. It reads, "A woman does not wear that which pertains to a man, nor does a man put on a woman's garment, for whoever does this is an abomination to Yahuwah your Elohim." Now, brothers and sisters, a couple things here. Number one, this is a Torah command. And so the implications of this are very serious. In other words, this is something that you don't want to be wrong on. This is something that you don't want to err in. And furthermore, this is something that you don't want to roll the dice with. And what I mean by roll the dice with is that if you get to the end of this lesson and then you think to yourself that, okay, I could be wrong in this area. I don't believe I am wrong, but I could be wrong. You're rolling the dice. You are rolling the dice, and you don't want to roll the dice. Praise Yahuwah. I know we all have to be persuaded in our own mind, but we don't want to roll the dice when it comes to the commandments of Yah. Praise Yah. And not only is this a command to not do this, but it says, for whoever does this is an abomination to Yahuwah your Elohim. It does not say the act itself is an abomination, which it is, but that's not what this is saying. This is saying whoever, the person who does this is an abomination to Yahuwah. Abomination is something Yahuwah hates.
That's right.
So it says the very person who does this is abomination to Yahuwah. This is why it's very serious. This is why you don't want to go wrong on this, and you don't even want to roll the dice. Praise Yahuwah. But I want to look at look at a couple principles here as we get started. Turn to Wa'ikra. Leviticus chapter 20. And just dealing with the principle of set-apartness, being set apart from the world, being set apart from the other nations. In Leviticus chapter 20, verse 26, it reads, "And you shall be Kodesh to me, for I, Yahuwah, am Kodesh, and have separated you from the peoples to be mine." So he has separated us, severed us from other people in order to be his. Praise Yahuwah. So we are to be set apart from the world. Now, 1 Peter chapter 1. And I want to read this passage just to alleviate any type of doubts that people may have as far as that, is clothing important to Yah? That when he talks about set apartness, that is he talking about outward matters like clothing, or is he just talking about inward matters of the heart? Well, let's look at what Kepha says here. All right, 1 Peter 1, verse 13, "Therefore, having girded up the loins of your mind, be sober, put your expectation perfectly upon the favor that is to be brought to you at the revelation of Yahushua HaMashiach, as obedient children, not conforming yourselves to the former lusts in your ignorance. Instead, as the one who called you is Kodesh, so you also should become Kodesh in all behavior. Because it has been written, be Kodesh, for I am Kodesh." So Kepha says we are to be Kodesh in all behavior. Whether it's inward matters of the heart, or whether it's outward matters, such as how we dress, how we eat, how we talk, how we walk, how we conduct ourselves. In all behavior, we are to be Kodesh. And so we are to be set apart. There is supposed to be a distinction between us and the world. Praise Yahuwah. There should be a visible distinction between us and the world, because the world has no regard for the word of Yah. The world has no regard for how Yah wants people to dress, how Yah wants people to conduct themselves. So because we do regard that, then we will stick out even physically, even visually, that we should be set apart from the world. Praise Yahuwah. Now, Shemot, Exodus chapter 23. Now, as a result of our set apartness, brothers and sisters, praise Yahuwah, that we have to be very careful about when the crowds start running to something, the crowds start doing something. When something becomes real popular with man, we have to be very careful and we have to be very discerning. Yahushua said, take heed, watch, and pray. See, Exodus 23 verse 2 says, "Do not follow a crowd to do evil, nor bear witness in a strife, so as to turn aside after many to pervert." So we are not to follow a crowd to do evil. That's Exodus chapter 23 verse 2. We are not to follow a crowd to do evil. Now, I mention this because, see, Yahushua said, that which is highly esteemed among man is abomination in the sight of Yah. And so you see the crowds, you see all these young Hebrew girls, and you may even see your sisters and your cousins and their daughters, and how they want to run to the Beyonce concert. You say, well, hey, I want my girls to have fun too, so I'm going to let them go too. No, that's following the crowd. and following a crowd to do evil. So you got to understand that when there are big moves like that move big crowds of people, and it doesn't have anything to do with Yahuwah, praise Yah, you got to watch that. Because most of the time it's something that we need to have nothing to do with. Praise Yah. Now Yah may put you in a situation, praise Yah, where He may have you go where crowds are going so you can be a light and a witness. Praise Yah. But I'm just saying in general that whatever the crowds are rushing to, that's something that we don't need to have a part in. Praise Yahuwah. So we're not to follow a crowd. In our set apartness, we're not to follow a crowd. The reason why I say that is this issue of women wearing pants. Do you know that historically speaking, and I'm talking, not in the Western cultures now, and I'm not saying Western culture is just the standard for everything, but for many centuries this was not an issue. For many centuries, this was not an issue. And even here in the United States of America, this was not an issue. That women wore dresses and skirts, and men wore pants. And so, not that both of those are specifically mentioned in Scripture, but there is a principle there. And that principle that is at work is clear distinction between the genders. Clear distinction between the genders. That in older days, in past generations, in America even, that women dress distinctively different than men. And so in these modern times, that distinction has eroded. And so what we have to ask ourselves, remember now, we're not to follow the crowd to do evil. Because I talked to an old man about this. This man was about 70 years old. This was in Texas. And he heard me teach on this one time. And see, his wife wore pants. And he said, you know what? He said, I don't think that Yah is too concerned about whether a woman wears pants or not. And I asked this old man this question. I said, you know what? I said, you're old enough to remember this. There was a time when, in general, women didn't wear pants in the United States of America. And then what happened was there was a sweeping change that took place. All across the nation, a sweeping change. And see, it began in World War II that women started putting on pants and working in the factories because a lot of the men were going off to war. So they started doing that. But as far as it becoming fashion, see, that began when Marilyn Monroe and how she would dress up in a soldier's outfit and she would parade around and it was supposed to be cute and funny. And then you have I Love Lucy, you have Lucille Ball, and she'd be walking around with her pants on, her and Ethel, her friend. And so they started putting that on TV. And then the sexual revolution came in the 1960s. And so with the sexual revolution, that you had all kind of changes that were taking place. And with those changes, you had the birth of the feminist movement. And so what happened was gender roles started to erode. And there's a sweeping change that took place across the country. And what I asked this old man is this. Whenever there's a sweeping change that affects millions of people, something has gone on in the spirit realm. So tell me, was that move that took place of Yah, or was it of the devil? And that old man said to me, you know what, brother? I never thought of it like that. That's all he said to me. He said, I never thought of it like that. But think about that. See, we have to be aware of things like this, brothers and sisters. When we see a sweeping cultural change, we have to be very discerning. We have to ask ourselves, where is this thing coming from? Like, for example, something that's been taking place over the past maybe 10, 15 years, I would say, would be people getting these big holes in their ears. Hole big enough you could stick your thumb through. Putting these big holes in their ears. A lot of young people, sweeping change all over the country. Let me ask you this. Is that a trend that our young people should follow? Is that something that we should be doing? See the crowds, a lot of young people going around and making big holes in their ears like that. You have to ask, where is this coming from? See, Yah is against us abusing our flesh like that, doing unnatural things to our flesh. Yah is against that. So that way you know that sweeping move that took place, where all these young people started putting these big old holes in their ears, you know that wasn't of Yah. And people wearing tattoos and whatnot, and how that's really... Now people were already doing that in the 60s and 70s, but it's really amped up over the past maybe 10, 20 years or so. Okay, but Yah says we're not to put any markings in our flesh. You know that move wasn't of Yah. And so, brothers and sisters, think about that. In the 1950s and the 1960s, did this country experience spiritual revival or spiritual decline? And if you agree that this country experienced spiritual decline, then is it a possibility that this sweeping change of women used to wear pants, or used to wear dresses and skirts, now wearing pants in large numbers, is it a possibility that was a result of the spiritual decline that has taken place in this country? And see, I talked about this too in the 60s. That's when that feminism started really coming in strong. Now, it had already started, in earlier years, but it really started coming in strong. And that's when there started to become this gender confusion. Homosexuality started becoming more popular and whatnot, lesbianism. And see, it is so, we have to pay attention to things that are really embedded in our culture. Like the statement, who wears the pants in the family? Because it used to be true, it was the man who wore the pants. And so when there is a question concerning authority, the question would be asked, who wears the pants? But you can't ask that today. Praise Yah. Pants in this country are a symbol of authority. All right? Now, do you think that it is the least bit strange that women in larger numbers now, they wear pants? Most women in America wear pants. And then I would venture to say that most women in America have a problem with male authority and male headship in the marriage. Do you think that's a coincidence? I mean, it's a laughable thing, oh, ha, who wears the pants? But really, think about it. Think about it in that context. Do you think it's a coincidence that most women, they wear pants now? Praise Yah. But they also have a problem with male headship in the marriage. Male authority in the marriage. See, we have to ask ourselves questions like that. Praise Yah. Because this idea of women wearing pants, it's all part of that whole gender confusion, this gender confusion scheme. Praise Yah. If there's anybody in this culture that should be making distinction between men and women, it should be Yah's people. We should be the ones making the distinction. People should not have to look to Burger King and McDonald's to see the distinction. What do you mean by that? See, they go amongst Yah's people, they don't really see that distinction, but they go to Burger King and McDonald's. Even if you can't read, you go to the bathroom, and you know which one's the women's, and you know which one's the man's. Why? Because they got the woman with the dress and the man with the pants.
It's true.
There's more distinction at Burger King and McDonald's than there is amongst a lot of Yah's people.
Help us, Father.
Praise Yah. We got to think about things like this, brothers and sisters. Praise Yah. Now, hallelujah. Job 9. Job chapter 9. Because I want to build upon this principle I'm talking about as far as being separate from the world and not running after the world's trends. And this is why we should not run after the world's trends. Job 9. Job chapter 9. And I'm going to read one verse out of here. Verse 24. It says, earth has been given into the hand of the wicked. He covers the faces of its judges. If it is not he, then who is it? So we see that the earth has been given into the hand of the wicked. This was true even in Job's day. Praise Yah. All right, 1 John. 1 John. 1 John chapter 5. I'm going to read one verse here. Verse 19. It says, we know that we are of Elohim, and all the world lies in the wicked one. So John tells us that all the world lies in the wicked one. All the world, the whole world lieth in wickedness. That's what it says if you have a King James. So in other words, the whole world lies in the power of the evil one. So if that's true, brothers and sisters, then our fashions are driven by the wicked one. Our entertainments and amusements. See, all of these things that the crowds run after, that these things are generated by the wicked one. There are people at the top who set the trends and set the pace in these areas, people that are being led by the wicked one. See, we can't pretend that we live in a neutral world, that we just live in a vacuum. No, we live in a world that is hostile to the way of Yah. In every respect, hostile to the precepts and principles of Yah's Word. Praise Yahuwah. So because of that, we have to really watch these different trends and changes that take place in society. Praise Yahuwah. All right, now, what I want to do now, brothers and sisters, is I want to deal with the two main objections that I've heard to what I'm teaching. Because obviously I teach that women should not wear pants. That a woman wearing pants is a violation of Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 5. Because we already see that it's a violation of the principles I brought forth out of Torah. It's not set apartness. It doesn't show forth distinction between a man and a woman. And I mean visible distinction. People talk about, oh, but it's women's pants. It's women's pants. No, you're 50 feet away. Pants are pants. Mm-hmm. Praise Yah. We're talking visible distinction. You could be 50 feet away and know where the women and men's bathroom is in McDonald's. Visible distinction. See, it violates that principle. Praise Yah. But see, I'm going to go even deeper into this, brothers and sisters, but I want to deal with these objections. Now, one objection is something that I've heard from Israelites and people in church as well. This is a very popular objection. So especially those of you that are Hebrew scholars, please pay close attention to what I'm about to say here. Praise Yah. Because on the surface it sounds like a good argument, but when you really look at it, then you'll see that it's not. Now, the word used for man, the woman shall not wear that which pertains unto a man, is 1397 in the Hebrew Strongs. And that word is gaber. Now here's the deal. The word gaber means a strong man, a mighty man, or a warrior. A strong man, a mighty man, or a warrior. Now one thing you have to be very careful about with the Hebrew language, Praise Yah, because people, sometimes people say, well, you really got to know the Hebrew, you really got to know the Hebrew, and I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I've taken a basic level of Hebrew myself, and I'd like to learn more. Praise Yah. But this is one problem you can run into with the Hebrew language. Sometimes there are 3 or 4 definitions of a word, and a person can choose the definition that more fits their persuasion or their doctrine. But it may not necessarily be the true definition of the word. And see, this is a good example of it right here. All right? That word Gaber means a strong man, a mighty man, or a warrior. All right? And so what the teaching is that when Yah said, the woman shall not wear that which pertaineth unto a man, it means she's not to, that there was a ritual back in that day where these women would put on soldier's armor, a warrior's armor, and go into these pagan temples and do their worship ritual. And so Yah was specifically referring to that pagan ritual where a woman would wear that which pertains unto a soldier. That's a very popular teaching. Praise Yah. And see, brothers and sisters, we have to prove all things. Don't just accept the teaching because it's saying what you want to hear. But you have to examine the whole thing. The reason why that teaching falls flat is this. All right? That could work for the first half of the verse, but it doesn't work for the whole verse. Because if you're saying that the woman shall not wear that which pertains unto a warrior, then you also have to say, neither shall a warrior put on a woman's garment. All who do such are abomination. So if you're a regular man and you're not a warrior, you can go ahead and cross-dress. But as long as you're not a warrior, then you're okay. Doesn't that sound ridiculous?
Absolutely.
Praise Yahuwah. So this Gaber has to work both in the first half of the verse and the second half of the verse. The woman shall not wear that which pertaineth unto a man, a Gaber. Neither shall a man, a Gaber, put on a woman's garment. So it stands to reason, brothers and sisters, that if a man in general should not be putting on a woman's garment, then a woman should not be wearing that which pertains unto a man in general.
That's right.
Because that usage of Gaber, it's either talking about a man in general or it's talking about a warrior. You can't have it both ways.
That's right.
Now, of course, we know it includes a warrior, but at the same time, the primary meaning of it is a man in general, because it has to work throughout the whole verse now. Praise Yah. And I'm going to prove what I'm saying here. Turn to Psalm 34. Psalm 34. I want to show you a couple other usages of this word Gaber, when it uses the word Gaber for man. Because if you're not careful, people can make you think that whenever Gaber shows up, it always has to strictly mean warrior, and it does not. I'm going to show you a couple cases where Gaber is actually talking about a man in general. Praise Yah. Even though it talks about a strong man, a mighty man, but it's talking about a man in general, not necessarily a professional soldier. All right, Psalm 34, verse 8. Oh, taste and see that Yahuwah is good. Baruch is the man, Gaber, that takes refuge in him. So is it Baruch? So is the man, is just an everyday man who takes refuge in him Baruch, or only a soldier who takes refuge in him? Praise Yahuwah. Baruch is the man that takes refuge in him. Now, here's an even better one. Chapter 37. Chapter 37, verse 23. The steps of a man, in King James it says good man. But the steps of a man are ordered by Yahuwah, and he delights in his way. The steps of a Gaber are ordered by Yahuwah, and he delights in his way. Does that only pertain to warriors, soldiers, or can that pertain unto a man in general? Praise Yahuwah. So what we have to understand, brothers and sisters, is that word Gaber is not strictly limited to warriors and soldiers. But it could mean just a mighty man, a strong man. Praise Yah. It can mean a man in general. I just showed you a couple Psalms where it's dealing with a man in general, but it uses the word Gaber. And so the linguistic argument that because the word Gaber is used for man in Deuteronomy 22:5, that's only pertaining to some certain pagan ritual, that is not true, because it doesn't work throughout the whole verse. Praise Yah. So that's the first objection that I often hear against this. The second one is an appeal to culture. An appeal to culture. That pants and dresses, that's just merely American culture. That even in ancient times, men and women wore robes. And so when you say that a woman should not wear pants, you're only dealing with culture. And so basically what we do in American culture has no relevance, because cultures change over different times, etc., etc. Well, we already talked about who drives culture, brothers and sisters, because the whole world lies in the power of the evil. And so we got to be careful even with cultural trends that take place. Praise Yah. But I do want to say something regarding culture. While it is true that in Bible days, Scripture days, in the days of our forefathers that we read about, that men and women wore robes, praise Yah, there was a distinction in the robes that they wore, so that you knew what was a man's robe and a woman's robe. But that's not the main point I want to bring out. The main point I want to bring out is this now. This is culture. Turn to Job 38. Job 38. We're going to look at Hebraic culture now. Job 38. Job 38. I'm going to read verses 1 through 3. It says, Then Yahuwah answered Eob out of the whirlwind and said, Who is this who darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Now gird up your loins like a man, a Gaber, and I ask you and you answer me. So Yah tells Eob, gird up your loins like a man, a Gaber, like a warrior, a mighty man, a strong man. Praise God. Doesn't necessarily have to be a warrior, but a strong man, a mighty man. Gird up your loins like a man. That's what Yah told Eob. Praise Yah. All right, now chapter 40. Job 40. Job 40, verse 7. Verses 6 and 7. It says, Then Yahuwah answered Eob out of the whirlwind and said, Now gird up your loins like a man, a Gaber. I ask you and you answer me. Twice Yah says, gird up your loins like a man, a Gaber. Could be a warrior, but a mighty man, a strong man. Praise Yah. A man in general. Because see, I'll tell you this. Now, in Hebrew culture, yes, men wore robes, but men who were active, men that would have to do things where they would have to run, or they would have to fight. Although they wore robes, that they would take their robes and they would tuck it between their legs and around their legs, and they would form that robe around their legs in such a way that would make it look like they had Bermuda shorts on. That practice was called the girding of the loins. We see Eliyahu girding up his loins so he could run. Mm-hmm. We see instances of men girding up their loins for battle. But you know what's absent in the Scripture? Women girding up their loins. You don't see women girding up their loins. You see men girding up their loins. You don't see it with women. Yah said, gird up your loins like a man. Praise Yahuwah. Why did Yah use man, Gaber, for that example of girding up the loins? Praise Yahuwah. See, the woman shall not wear that which pertaineth unto a man, especially a mighty man, strong man. Well, scripturally, what does pertain unto a man, a mighty man, a strong man? Girded loins.
That's right.
Girded loins pertain unto men. You don't see women girding their loins in the Scriptures. So when a woman wears pants, it has the same effect of having girded loins. Praise Yahuwah. So you want to talk about culture? Well, this is culture here. That was part of Hebraic culture. Men wore robes, but they would gird their loins so they could run and so they could fight. Praise Yahuwah. But we don't have scriptural examples of women girding their loins. Oh, Proverbs 31, it talks about the virtuous woman. It says she girds her loins with strength and strengtheneth her arms, but that's obviously symbolic. You don't see women physically girding up their loins like you see these mighty men who had to run and who had to fight and who had to work. Praise Yahuwah. Hallelujah. And so I dealt with the two main objections that we see, the linguistics dealing with the word Gaber, and then also culture. And now just because we're in a different culture than our people were in ancient days, then that command is not relevant. Praise Yahuwah. Well, brothers and sisters, that, like I said earlier, when we don't have a specific thou shalt or a thou shalt not, we have to look to principles. And we already know it's a Torah principle for us to be set apart from the world. It's a Torah principle for there to be a clear distinction between the sexes, between the genders. A clear distinction in how we dress, a clear distinction in our roles in the family, the husband and the wife, a clear distinction just in our behavior, in so many things. There is to be a distinction between the man and the woman. Why? Because Yah created men and women to be distinctly different. And so all of this blurring of the distinction that's taken place in the American culture, it's abomination to Yahuwah. Yahuwah hates it. All this homosexuality, transgenderism, unisex dressing, it's abomination in the eyes of Yah. And we, as Yah's people, are to have nothing to do with it. We're to be set apart from that. Praise Yahuwah. And so, brothers and sisters, you know, we talk about principles, that when you get so stuck on, as far as the precepts, that you can't see the principles, that would be like if you drove down the street and you see an Israelite brother and his car is stalled, and you know that brother hates you, that brother despises you, and his car is stalled, and you just drive on by and do nothing. And then somebody calls you on it later on and says, hey, you were supposed to stop and help that brother. Yeah, that's what the Torah says. And then what if you were to turn to that person and say, no. The Torah says that if the ox or the donkey of the one who hates you is stalled on the side of the road, you go and help them. I didn't violate Torah because he didn't have an ox or a donkey. Wouldn't that be ridiculous? Praise Yahuwah. But see, that's what happens when we do away with principle. Not only are we going to be judged by Torah precept, we're going to be judged by Torah principle. So it's not just a matter of, was there a specific thing in Torah talking about pants? No, it's not just that. But were you set apart unto Yah? Were you set apart from the world? Did you make distinction, gender distinction, in all of your behavior? The way you dress, the way you carry yourself. You see, we're going to be judged on that as well, because these things are principles. We have to take the principles and apply them to our modern times. Did you follow a crowd to do evil? Knowing that this pants thing on women is a modern concoction that has come in with all manner of other abominations, did you take the time to watch and pray and discern and ask, Yah, is this of you? Should I be following this trend? Praise Yah. And I would venture to say many people in our generation didn't, because, the milk was spilt by the time our generation came, my generation and those younger than me, I mean, the milk was already spilled. But I'm talking about when this first started coming out, baby boom generation, when this first started becoming popular, you see, then, I mean, y'all's going to be dealing with people on, hey, did you watch and pray? Did you discern what was going on at that time, or did you just follow the crowd? Follow the trends? Praise Yahuwah. But see, now that we have a better idea of what happened back then, even though we didn't live back then, we can go backwards and say, whoa, okay, now I realize what happened back then. Now I realize that it didn't always used to be like this in America, that women used to set themselves apart more in their gender roles and in the way they dressed, but then that changed. So now I can go back and ask myself, whoa, okay, why did that change? What kind of other changes took place alongside of women wearing pants? And then as we get the answers to these questions, then we can get closer to the truth, brothers and sisters. Praise Yahweh. Because we have to have discernment. We can't be ignorant of the devil's devices. With all these other trends that have come in that has blurred the distinction of the genders, the feminism, women butching their hair off and whatnot, the upswing of women's sports and whatnot. And now, I was at a restaurant, I think it was, and I was looking at the TV set, and it had a commercial of the WNBA, the Women's National Basketball Association. And it was a commercial. It was this woman on there with her short hair, and she was on there promoting this homosexual stuff. It was like gay pride, some event was going on. And they just, displayed the banner right beside her, WNBA and everything. I was like, wow! I mean, she wasn't doing this on her personal accord. She was doing this with the sanction of the WNBA. And you know why? Because they say that the majority of women in the WNBA, 80% or more, are lesbians. You had a woman with that brand now. It used to be that corporations stayed away from stuff like that. Praise Yah. But with that brand right by her on the screen, here she was promoting some gay pride event and whatnot. But see, this is more of a recent thing that has come in past couple generations. So with the women's athletics and women rejecting male authority and headship in marriage and women demanding equality. Praise Yah. Women becoming more like men. I've heard of foreigners asking Americans, why do your women want to be men? That's what they ask. Why do your women want to be men? So with this surge that has taken place of all these anti-Yah activities that blurred the distinction of the genders, at the same time these things came in, the women wearing pants thing came in. Who wears the pants? We have to ask ourselves questions like that, brothers and sisters. Praise Yahuwah. So, as I said, this is a commandment of Yah. This is not something that you even want to roll the dice with. Praise Yahuwah. And so I really ask and I pray that you take what I'm saying seriously. Take this thing to prayer. Praise Yahuwah. And if you talk to somebody that's trying to knock this down, praise Yahuwah, you need to ask yourself some questions about that individual that's trying to knock that down. Praise Yahuwah. But above all things, test what I said with the scriptures. Test what I said with the scriptures and with the discernment of the Ruach HaKodesh, because this is a serious matter, brothers and sisters. This is something that you can miss the kingdom over if you get this wrong. And I'm dead serious about this. I stand flat-footed and tell you this. Praise Yahuwah. So pray on this. Praise Yah. Study this. Go back over this video. Praise Yahuwah. And if you come to a different conclusion than myself, what I ask you to do is put it down in the comments. Bring your scriptures. Put your scriptures down in the comments if you come to a different conclusion. Praise Yahuwah. Don't bring me no Gaber. We already dealt with that. Don't bring me no Gaber. And don't talk to me about culture. We already dealt with that. Praise Yahuwah. Unless you have some findings that I didn't bring out now when it comes to culture, then yeah, you're welcome. Praise Yah. But other than that, if you have some kind of new arguments with this matter that I didn't bring forth, and you don't feel that I was complete in bringing forth this teaching, put it in the comments. Praise Yah. Let's put this thing to the test, because a lot of sisters in Yashraal, praise Yahuwah, they're hanging in the balance on this thing, and it's because they're not being taught right. It's the leaders of my people that cause them to err, and they that are led of them are destroyed. Praise Yahuwah. Brothers and sisters, teachers, mores, we have to discern our own motives. If you oppose what I'm saying, why do you oppose it? Are you thinking to yourself, oh, my wife could never get with this. That would never work in my household. Or, oh, my congregation wouldn't receive this. That's not the right motive. Truth is truth. I've heard it said before, truth is truth, no matter, even if no one believes it. A lie is a lie, even if everyone believes it. You got to get your wife out of the picture. You got to get your congregation out of the picture. You got to get your mama out of the picture. And it's you and Yah. Praise Yah. We got to make sure our motives are right. Praise Yah. See, when we're dealing with things like this, because see, we've dealt with this on other subjects before. When we've talked to people and we said the first thing that you need to establish is about any teaching is it true? Once you've determined whether or not something is true, then you start thinking about, okay, how will that fit into my life? How will that apply to my life? But see, the problem is people get it reversed. They first ask the question, how would this apply to my life? How would this work in my life? And then when they don't get a satisfactory answer, then they'll just conclude it's not true. Just because it won't work in their life. Sister, you may have a job. You may have a job that requires you to wear pants. And I urge you, don't think on your job, and because you want to keep your job, come to the conclusion that what I'm teaching you is not true. That's not the right approach. Determine if this is true or not, and then you make your decision about your job. Praise Yahuwah. It's like King Amaziah. King Amaziah, he took them 10,000 talents of silver, and he hired the northern kingdom, the Ephraimites, to go into battle with him. King Amaziah, king of Yehuda, king of Judah, praise Yah. And the man of Yah came to him and said, don't you take the Ephraimites with you in the battle, because you will lose. King Amaziah said, but what about the 10,000 talents of silver that I gave them? That man of Yah said, Yah is able to give you much more than this. That's what I say to you, sister. You got a job, they require you to wear pants. Praise Yah, but you see the truth of what I'm teaching you, and you say, what do I do? That's my job. Yah is able to give you much more than that. We got to take a step of Yah. We got to be obedient to Yah. Praise Yahuwah. And lastly, I want to say this. See, some of you brothers have a problem with what I'm teaching because you say, oh, the camps teach that. The camps teach that. See, I'm not teaching this because of camps. I don't know what the camps do and don't teach when it comes to this. I just know what other people have told me. But you may say to yourself, well, that's camp doctrine. The camps teach that. Well, I mean, the camps teach that Yahushua rose from the dead the third day. Do you teach that? Praise Yah. Are suits bad because the mafia wears them? See, a broken clock is right twice a day. I mean, that's not a good argument that, oh, the camps teach it, so it must be wrong. No, the camps teach a lot of stuff that's right. That's what makes them so deceptive. Is they teach enough things that are right and enough things that are true to pull people in, and then they can inject them with their poison. Praise Yah. So you can't just shoot it down because the camps teach it. Because I'm not getting this from the camps. I'm getting this from Yah. Praise Yahuwah. So, brothers and sisters, I brought it forth. What you do with it's between you and Yah. Praise Yahuwah. So with that, I will say, Shalom.